Hello and welcome to ITIL 4 Foundation tutorial. I am CMR Chandra MR, a certified ITIL expert and ITIL managing professional. As part of this tutorial, we are going to understand the framework ITIL 4 and also understand the basic definitions of IT service management as defined in ITIL best practice. Before we get into understanding ITIL best practice framework, let us understand the IT service management and its benefit by applying the best practice framework ITIL 4. What would be the benefits which we get? So for that, let us assume a scenario where two employees are discussing about advantages of adopting and adapting ITIL best practices. Why has ITIL become so popular these days? Large, medium and small organizations across the world use ITIL in order to improve the value of their services. But how can ITIL improve an organization's performance? With ITIL, an organization doesn't just save money but also works more effectively. It also have more benefits that are reduced IT cost, enhanced IT services, improved productivity, better management of business risk and service disruption, improved customer satisfaction by delivering efficient services, and provides guidance to address service management challenges. That's great. Which is the latest ITIL framework and what's new about it? ITIL 4 is the latest update. ITIL has evolved from many years and ITIL 4 is the latest version and this was released in February 2019. It focuses on practical approach on how to manage the core principles of quality services, how to implement ITIL from large to small organizations, and how ITIL can be utilized with frameworks such as Agile, Lean and DevOps. Now, what is in it for us to learn and understand from ITIL 4 tutorial? So as part of this tutorial, we are going to now look at what is ITIL 4, elements of the ITIL 4 framework, that is 4 dimensions, and ITIL service value chain and its components. Then details about ITIL 4 certifications and companies using ITIL. So what is ITIL? ITIL is a set of framework of IT service management that helps in aligning IT services with the requirements of the business. So it helps organizations to deliver IT services using the most efficient method. So ITIL goal is to improve efficiency and achieve predictable service delivery. So finally, what it means for us when we say IT service management, information technology service management. So ITSM stands for Information Technology Service Management, where it focuses on how an organization maintains IT services for customers. Also, it controls various activities involved in a process. Activities like planning, designing, delivering, deploying, and managing services. ITIL 4 emphasizes the importance of value creation rather than just delivering services. This involves value. Always, as Lean mentioned repeatedly, value should be always in customer perspective. So there should be an outcome. Generally, we use the term called output for the products or services which are created. But by using that product or services, one has to have realization of the value created by it. So that requires to have certain outcomes. We're not speaking about just the features and function of a specific product or services. We're speaking about how the customer is benefited from that features and functionality, which helps customer or consumers to realize the value. Then creation of a value should be always with collaboration and cooperation. So ITIL 4 more emphasizes on co-creation of value. So this also involves managing specific cost and risk. When we say managing specific cost and risk, it's about service provider to own the cost and risk, and this cost and risk is not for the consumer or customer. So value must be clearly defined. As the purpose of an organization, it is to create value for its stakeholders, whereas outcome is a result of service. They are specific and help you know whether you have reached your goal. So now, to understand the outcome of an output, let us understand this example. An output of wedding photography is the photo album, but the outcome is the satisfaction that is experienced by the client when looking at the album. If album is an output, in the first case, you can see the photos are not clear, means poor customer experience. That would be the outcome. Similarly, the album output where it is very clear, the experience of the customer will be very good. So that is an outcome. So finally, co-creation of value. In order to deliver the high quality output, the service provider should maintain an interactive relationship with its stakeholders and customers. It's very essential to interact, understand the perspective view of the stakeholders, and create the value accordingly. For example, co-creation is a business strategy which helps consumer receive the results based on their requirements. If you take up this scenario of a restaurant where service providers provides certain dish versus service provider provides certain facilities to the consumers of the food in the restaurant, so that they will have a better experience and feedback can be provided then and there itself. So this helps the restaurant personnel to work on those feedbacks and improve the service experience to the customers. The amount of money spent on specific activity or resources should be managed wisely. And as I mentioned earlier, cost and risk of any services provided by a service provider is with service provider. Consumer of a service just pays for a service, and then as the service consumption is complete, they will just offboard themselves. Like you go and book a taxi, you get onboarded to taxi, and then you get off the taxi as you reach your destination. You will not own the vehicle, you are not owning that car, you are not owning that any mobile app if you have used to book the taxi. All the cost and risk associated with these service components would be for service provider. Another example can be Starbucks has offered internet access to its customers, which means all the associated components with the Starbucks internet services, the cost and risk associated with that is owned by Starbucks. Now what is ITIL 4? So ITIL 4, how to identify whether a service is delivering value to customer and meeting their requirements. Solution, this can be identified by evaluating the utility and warranty. Now it is very essential to understand what is utility and warranty for us. So utility refers to the functionality offered by product in order to meet a specific requirement. For example, utility of a training service is about the timings of the service, the content delivered during the services, the profile of the trainer, etc. Whereas email services, if I take an example, utility is all those parameters, features, functionalities associated with the email services, like mailbox capacity or the speed of emails sending or receiving, etc. Now similarly, warranty refers to the customer with certain assurance of the products, like service availability, information security, service capacity, and service continuity. So these four, service availability, information security, or service capacity and service continuity, has to ensure the specific provided services is having those solutions which will safeguard these requirements of the services, and service will become fit for use. If I take a similar example of email services which we discussed just now. So warranty is about availability of email services. How safe is my message when I send and receive the messages? Means information security. Capacity, do I have a sufficient capacity so that all the emails can be stored? And then continuity, what happens if something goes wrong drastically, some failure happens? Minimum services should be up and running so that my messaging services is on for at least minimum need of the messaging requirements. That is about warranty. So utility refers to fit for purpose, basically referring to features, functionality of the service, whereas warranty refers to these four things: availability, security, capacity, and continuity, making a specific services fit for use. So elements of ITIL 4. So here we are going to look at understanding two main elements defined in ITIL 4, that is 4 dimensions and ITIL service value system. So let us look at 4 dimensions of services. So the 4 dimensions of services involves organizations and people, informations and technology, partners and suppliers, and value streams and processes. Always it is required to look at a service having a holistic picture. So having this holistic picture requires correct understanding about these 4 dimensions of services. So when I say organizations and people, when I say information and technology, partners and suppliers, values and value streams and processes. So all these 4 dimensions will be definitely involved and required to look at for every services. So let us understand these one by one. Now organization people refers to the organization structure, the culture, the people, the principles, the values revolving around the people and organization structure, which makes for providing better outcomes, for creating better outcomes for the services. Similarly, information and technology involves information and knowledge which is required along with the technology to provide a required services and service management. The partners and suppliers focuses on those stakeholders who supplies certain services for a service provider so that service provider can provide the better services to their consumers of the services. Value streams and processes refers to the series of steps organization takes to create, deliver the products throughout the service life cycle of a services. Now to take an example, if I assume a services like taxi services, which I defined earlier, we discussed earlier. Who is organization and people? The people sitting in the customer care, the people like drivers, the people sitting in the business, people sitting in the finance, people sitting in the technology. So all these form certain organization structure having people in it. So that fulfills organization people dimension of services. Whereas information and technology, like car itself is a technology device. Information about the schedule or information about the driver. Similarly, the technology platform, the mobile app, what you use, can be the one which you can visualize for information and technology. For partners and suppliers, now generally if you look at the examples like Ola or Uber services, taxi services, they are not employed by the Ola or Uber. They are the partners and suppliers for providing the taxi services to Ola on Uber on behalf of Ola and Uber. So similarly, internet services will be provided to Ola and Uber by a supplier. So partners and suppliers involvement is essential in any services. Now value streams and processes. Now when you actually open a mobile app and book a taxi, you need a process which has to be established and defined. And this process would connect to the trigger or to check what vehicles are available and book a vehicle for you, allocate a vehicle for the specific consumer. Similarly, that process triggering to a billing system. Likewise, many processes are connected with each other, forming a value stream to achieve a specific objective of a consumer, and this involves many processes. So considering these four dimensions, every services has these four dimensions, and consideration of these four dimensions are essential while strategizing a services, designing a services, transitioning a services, delivering a services, supporting a services throughout the life cycle of the services. So all these four dimensions are impacted by an external factors, 6 external factors. So these 6 external factors can also be called as pestle factors, which is basically political factor, economic factors, social factors, technological factors, legal factors, and environmental factors. So further, each dimension, as I mentioned, is affected by multiple factors, and we saw that. And next, let us look at ITIL service value system. So this forms the core part of ITIL framework. So this shows an end-to-end view about what is involved in service value system. So it starts with opportunity demand, which is shown in the left side, and every services creating the value and continually improve to align and create the value. So when I say opportunities and demand, so which becomes a reason for triggering an actions and activities and move from left to right. Similarly, as it moves from left to right, the value is created. Opportunity, the term opportunity refers to the needs, requirements of customers or consumers, which is realized by service provider to fulfill. Whereas demand represents the requirement for products and services from the customers. So either opportunity realized by service provider, which is unfulfilled need of consumers or customers, whereas demand, where customer or consumer is asking and booking those products or services from you, would create certain actions with the service providing organizations. So ultimately, it should result in creation of those product or services with the specific features and functions. So those would enable the creation of value, and also that value represents a valuable outcome. Now, the components of service value system, as we saw, guiding principles is one of that, which help in providing a comprehensive vision of how an organization should manage a service. So there are 7 principles. So that is focus on value, start where you are, think and work holistically, progress iteratively with feedback, keep it simple and practical, collaborate and promote visibility, and optimize and automate. So when we say focus on value, which means everything we do as part of services, so every task an organization does should create value for stakeholders, especially it should encourage to focus on user experience and give better consumer experience so that there can be continually the value is realized by the consumer or customers. Next principle, start where you are, refers to ensuring that organization assess and analyze the scenarios to identify and improve things on a continual basis. For example, organization assessing and analyzing the existing processes to identify and improve. So progress, iterative and feedback. This opts for a feedback during every iterations of the work. Always ensures to organize work into small and manageable sections which can lead to quick results. collaborate and promote visibility. It is very essential to collaborate with customers, users, suppliers, and all the stakeholders who are involved in services and service actions, as it helps in creating much better value. Think and work holistically. So this creates a process that adds value to the customers or consumers and business, and always helps in identification of different ways to enhance the performance of the processes, because this provides the end-to-end view of a services. Keep it simple and practical. It is always important to opt for minimum steps that are correct and do not add processes that create value to the stakeholders. Optimize and automate. So optimize and automate refers to consideration of the services which needs to be optimized and automated, which helps in improving the efficiency and effectiveness, and also optimize the resources and costs. Next component of service value system is governance. So when we say governance basically is responsible for evaluating, directing, and monitoring the IT service management by adopting the guiding principles defined in ITIL 4 framework. It may also does demonstrate these principles considering the currently available or the principles which are defined in the organization. So this involves three main activities, that is evaluate, direct, and monitor. So evaluate refers to the performance of reviews of services on a continual basis based on the stakeholder requirements, so that how the services are performing, how the new opportunities coming up would be understood and that can made visible. The directions whatever is provided based on the evaluation done for the ITSM organization, so that accordingly the required directions can be accomplished. When I say direction, for example, organization can have directions to enhance the business opportunities. When I say business opportunities, increase the sales by 25% in coming quarter. When organization says this, now in what way IT service management can contribute to that? In what way the readiness of IT service management should be when organization enhances its business to 25%? Should we optimize something with us, or should we increase certain set of resources and capabilities so that increase of the business to 25% is actually supported or complemented by IT service management? Then as you implement that, as this direction is set, whether ITSM is contributing to that has to be checked, monitored. So it has to monitor the performance of the organization and has to check whether the practices, the products, the services, are they aligned? Are they aligned? Are they in line with the direction given by the governing body? It is very essential to understand this and have this in practice, so that services always continue to be aligned with the service organization's business requirements, and also the organizations or consumers who are using the services of a service provider. So it aligns to that as well. So evaluate, direct, and monitor happens continually, regularly, so that continued alignment of direction to the set direction by the governing body is ensured. So next component is service value chain, which is basically a component which is in the middle of a service value system. So this will have a set of interconnected activities that an organization performs to deliver a valuable product or services to its consumers. So this will have many activities like engage, plan, improve, design and transition, obtain and build, deliver and support, product and services. Now as you see in the left side you have a demand, right side you have a value. Now the demand which is represented in the left side, you don't see opportunities as it was mentioned in the service value system framework. In the left side we had demand and opportunity in that picture, but here we don't see that. The simple reason here, in a service value chain being part of service value system, it is always demand. When we refer to opportunities in service value system, the moment it is realized there is an opportunity, the discussion happens based on that and decision happens. As the decisions happen, now it is required to fulfill that demand by a service providing organization. That is the reason we don't see the word opportunity here. So as the demand is seen, now the engagement happens. Now how the engagement happens? So here it involves first planning. So planning refers to the activities involving creating plans, portfolios, architectures, policies, etc., which provides an organization a direction, a clarity in terms of what to do. If you refer to previous version of ITIL like ITIL V3, you can think about a service strategy part of the actions which used to take, like understanding the perspective of services, planning for the services, understanding service requirements, service level requirements, right? So which will enable to get the clarity in terms of the detail about the service services and what are those results which are required to be established. So now people would contribute to these activities and must have great analytical and management skills. There should be clear visualization about the services end to end. Like the principle we said, having a holistic approach. So unless I have a holistic picture, a bird's eye view, I cannot understand what services is being delivered and what is that value it is going to be created. So this full picture of services end to end has to be visualized. That is the reason plan is on the top like an umbrella. So one has to understand that very clearly. So as you get the insight towards that particular service requirement, service level requirements, once the plan is ready, then you will move forward with engage. So engage with the right set of stakeholders. Now why should we engage with the stakeholders? Engaging with stakeholders requires clear focus on understanding the requirements as needed by the consumers. We may require to document this, we may require to understand what is that people need skills and competency, right, in terms of engaging, and we need to know and demonstrate that. So while you understand and get a good understanding about the needs of the stakeholders may be like end user who are using the services, customers who are discussing straight, who are giving the requirements, whereas the suppliers who is also asking about the requirements in terms of provisioning their services to the service provider. So the engagement should go on with all those stakeholders to understand clearly and also set the expectation clearly to those stakeholders. So you may require to set an expectation to consumers, you may require to set an expectation to suppliers, you may require to set an expectation to users, and this has to continue throughout. So continually engaging with all the stakeholders throughout the service value system, and it's very rigorous as part of service value chain. So next activity would be design and transition. So design and transition focus on creating and releasing new and changed services. Now when we say designing a new services, if you recall the points with what we had in ITIL V3, like 4 P's we used to discuss, which we just saw like 4 dimensions. So people, process, products and partners, which is aligned to 4 dimensions thought which we just saw in the previous slides. So that is very essential to visualize. And defining service solution, defining technology architectures, defining processes, defining metrics, defining measurement methods and tools to measure that particular service and service performance. So this requires understanding and having those individuals who have comprehensive understanding about service management, and they should contribute to this entire exercise of design and transitioning. So unless you have that holistic picture what we are mentioning while planning and also while engaging to get the clarity, so designing would not provide you that blueprint required. Service design package we call it as, which we use this term in ITIL V3 perspective. But however, the terminology would not change. The blueprint, the service design package, what you have for a service, it is very necessary to have that in place with the detailed considerations of all the 4 dimensions of the services and also considering the impact of the pestle factors. So further, obtain and build. So obtain and build focuses on development and management of the infrastructure and applications. So you obtain means you acquire resources, you acquire components, infrastructure components like servers, storage, database or application platforms, the testing platforms you acquire, you test those, you make it ready, you set up that environment required for creation of a services, transition of a services, you obtain and build. Then further you deliver and support. This requires to ensure that services are delivered and supported in a way that meets stakeholders' expectations. So as you engage on a continual basis, there is a collaboration which is going on throughout. And also like progress iteratively with feedback, you need to take that approach so that you will have a feedback. So by doing this, you are demonstrating all the 7 principles. Right. So services provisioning is one part of it. New services provisioning or modifying the existing services to enhance the performance of the existing services with added features and functionality is one thought. Similarly, while there is an incident, while there is a disruption, while there is a failure, it is required to resolve those. Even in that scenario, one has to understand what are the impacts to the services, what are the impacts to the business, and handle accordingly. And this is true for while introducing a new services and while resolving the incidents or issues associated with the specific services which are up and running. So when it is happening with the better collaboration with the customers, consumers, suppliers, every stakeholders obviously will involve actively and they contribute as well as realize the value. It is very important that people contributing to this activity and need to be very good at prioritizing and managing complex workloads. So services such as resolving incidents, monitoring applications and infrastructure, generating reports, all these are the actions which happens as part of deliver and support. Now improve every service components, every processes, every individuals has to be improved. So the focus on software development and management of cloud infrastructure and third party services, which happens as part of service value chain. This we can term it as an example where your improvement can be focused on. Now, when I say improvement at all levels, you can think of improvement at a component level, improvement at an integration level, improvement at a service level, improvement at contribution to the business level. So as you go on each of these levels, it is quite obvious that you need to measure the performances at each of these levels. So as you measure the performances at each of these level, it provides you certain insight. Is the performance is according to what is required, what is planned, or is the services is there a deviation from the required performance? In either of these scenarios, it is very essential to check and see if there is any opportunity for improvement. If things are going as planned, then it's okay. So you need to identify the opportunities to improve further from that level. That would become baseline. If things are not happening the way it is planned, obviously that corrections are required. Again, the improvement thought comes in. So every services at any given point in time, one has to keep seeking the opportunities for improvement and keep improving. That comes through feedback, what you get on a continual basis from the consumers and users. Next component is practices. So there are around 34 management practices, which are designed to accomplish the specific objectives of a services. Now, when I say 34 practices, earlier we used to have called processes, which we used to say process and functions in ITIL V3 framework. So ITIL V3 had defined 26 processes and then 5 life cycle stages and also 4 functions. Now here in ITIL 4, realizing that not a specific process is dedicated or associated with only one life cycle stage. Each of those processes has so much of complexity, it cannot just called as a process and it has to be called as a practice because of the complexity and transactions involved. For example, if I take incident management, we used to call it as a process and we used to look at that as a process as part of service operation. Now, incident management process as part of service operation, fine, but what are the amount of activities it involves? What is the complexity of it? It goes across the various different functions. So looking at this scenario where this process goes across various functions to get it resolved. Now you think of a scenario where I need to resolve incident by doing certain changes. Now I trigger a change management. Now if you look at the entire framework of ITIL V3, change management is actually defined in service transition lifecycle stage. Now, but in operations you have incident management, whereas change management is in transition. So is that service moving back to the previous lifecycle stage? That was the confusion. So instead of that, if you say there is an incident management practice which is applicable irrespective of the stage of that particular service, change control which is applicable across the life cycle irrespective of the scenario the services is into, so then you are not bound to any specific life cycle stage. So while incident occurs, straight away you go and take the help of change control and then implement the required changes and then close the incidents. So this does not have any specific attachment or tying between a specific stage of the service life cycle. So if you can able to recall and visualize, ITIL V3 defined about 5 life cycle stages. First stage was service strategy having 5 processes, service design having 8 processes, service transition having 7 processes, service operation having 5 processes, and continual service improvement having around 1 process aligned with CSI model, continual service improvement model. Now, each of these process like SLA, service level agreement, which is there in service design stage. So this is discussed in strategy as well, and this service levels has to be monitored and managed during the service operations, and services has to be created and transitioned aligning with the service levels defined in design. So this is what the thought was, but the existence of that service level SLA service process, what we used to call, was there universally across the life cycle. Initially to define, next to transition, next to monitor and manage. So it was there. So the process gets triggered some point in time, but it is there throughout. Now, in ITIL 4, this particular practice is not bound to a specific life cycle stage. So, whenever it is required, it is triggered. And each of these practices are interconnected certain way. If I take another example, like information security management. So, this is also important throughout the life cycle. And very interesting part here is information security management practice is the one which is not just for a service provided by service provider alone. The practice of information security should be practiced across the organization, service providers organization, so that better information security can be provided to all the services provided by a service provider. So keeping this in mind, the 34 practices are grouped into three major categories: general management practice, service management practice, and technical management practices. When I say general management practice, so these general management practices, which are around 14 practices, are applicable across the organization, right? The general management practices are applicable across the organization, and this is not bound to any specific services. For example, change transformation, right? So if you have a major change which you used to call in ITIL V3, so that required certain amount of time to move the organization, thought, the culture, everything towards certain level, so that the change can become successful across the organization. Similarly, information security management, which I just mentioned. So many practices which are not just associated with one service can be generally applicable across the organization. So 14 general management practices are defined. So similarly, that 14 general management practices includes information security management, relationship management, strategic management, portfolio management. When I say portfolio, it is a portfolio of the organization, not just about one service. So architecture management and enterprise architecture, what we're speaking about, and service financial management, overall for all the services, workforce and talent management, continual improvement of all the services to suit the business requirement, to align and complement to the business. Measurement and reporting as a whole, risk management, knowledge management, organizational change management, which I just mentioned and explained in terms of having organizational transformation, project management, supplier management. So when I say information security management, to reiterate on, so this has to focus on ensuring the safeguarding, confidentiality, integrity and availability of information and information asset of organization. So only then all that activities I do as part of this organization will be under the umbrella of information security focus. So all that I do in this organization, so I need to ensure the information security is taken care. People moving from entry gate to my data center. So can I define that as part of data center services? No, I have a data center facility, but someone entering the premises, everyone who comes into my premises need not go to data center, but they move around the data center. It's quite obvious. I need to safeguard. Someone should not tailgate without anybody's knowledge. I need to set the controls at organization level. So people who are not authorized will not move towards data center. So the next level of security enablement can happen exclusively for data center. So that is again that is aligned with the framework of information security for the organization. So it is very essential to consider these practice at the organization level rather than just at a service level. The moment I focus at organization level, so all the applicable services will also get initiated and implementation of that particular practice, that application of that particular service as well. Similarly, if you look at relationship management, so when I say relationship at the broader perspective, relationship happens with two entities, two organizations, two individuals to two organization, two enterprises. So it is of that size. It is not about one individual have a relationship with another individual. A service manager has a relationship with another manager. It is not that. It's about two entities, service provider organization and customer organization, consumers organization. There should be relationship. And this relationship management also you can look at in terms of having across the organization within the various different departments and function within the organization. Similarly, relationship between a manager and subordinate, relationship between colleagues, relationship between suppliers and service provider, relationship between service provider and customer. So it's across. So main purpose of this is to ensure a good relationship is maintained between organizations and its stakeholders. Only then that required collaboration and transactions can happen to make the business successful. So keeping in this mind, rest all the practices as I mentioned, strategic management or portfolio management, architecture management, service financial management, workforce and talent management, continual improvement, measurement and reporting, risk management, knowledge management, organizational change management, project management, supplier management, all these has to consider across the organization perspective. Organization as a whole they should look at, right? So only then the required practice of making people to understand about the dynamics of the services, dynamics of the business can be enabled. I'll take one vague example, like you have we took the example of restaurant earlier. Now if I speak about relationship management relating to that restaurant, now who has to maintain the relationship now? The waiter who goes and speaks to the consumers who comes to the restaurant. There should be a relationship established. If not a relationship which lasts for long, on one-on-one basis, it's about creation of that experience, because that is one of the touch points. Now that is one experience what that consumer will have. The moment the consumer enters the restaurant, the ambience of the restaurant, the people who take care of the ambience of the restaurant, if they get the right feedback in time, what kind of ambience would help? What is the feedback about this from the customer? There is a transaction and relationship which is happening. Similar, the billing team, the people working in the kitchen versus the waiter, the time they manage, the information flow from them to the waiter and then to the consumers. So all, and taste of the food. Is that customers enjoying the food? Feedback going back to the kitchen and making necessary corrections there and fitting the need of the customers and consumers on a regular basis. So understanding this relationship across, so that it's quite obvious the consumer of a service will have a better experience. And this is it's not a one-time job. It should be there always and should continue throughout. It is very essential to demonstrate this. Only then customer will have a better experience. So likewise, all these generic practices should be applicable across the organization and demonstrated, so that you can create a better service experience to the consumers. So next is service management practices. So service management practices are the one which is applicable to specific services which are used for development, deployment, delivery and support in the organization's environment. When I say organization, it may be organization of service provider, organization of consumer, organization of supplier. So this involves around 17 practices. That is IT asset management, monitor and event management, means monitoring each of the service components and the service performance. Business analysis, service catalog management of all the operational services, service design, service level management for the specific service, availability management, capacity and performance management, service continuity management, service desk. Now remember, service desk was called as function when we were studying ITIL V3, but realizing service desk itself is a practice where all the 4 dimensions is applicable. So service desk is also termed as practice, and there is no word called function used in ITIL 4. So incident management, service request management. So request fulfillment was the terminology used there. Here it is service request management, problem management, release management, service validation and testing, service configuration management, change control. The 7 service management practices. Now looking at one of these practices like IT asset management. So we need to understand what is IT asset. So all those assets like server, a database, an application, an individual. So each of these forms service asset. We can also call it as configuration items. So one has to manage those so that their valuable asset are realized, managed properly, and they are performing and delivering at the level which is required to accomplish that required performance for creating a better service value to the consumers of the services. So IT assets are managed throughout the life cycle of that particular IT asset, and it is very essential to keep those IT assets performance at that level, so that no IT assets which are not considered are not kept without the visibility of those assets in the IT service management, so that they are performing at certain level, ensuring the services will be performing better, and that better service performance would result in better complement or contribution to the business. Similarly, if I look at monitoring and event management, now I am monitoring the services, the performance of the service components, and then their behaviors, the capacity utilized, the availability of those. So I'm monitoring those and learning the behavior of those service components, CIs. So emphasizing on generating and detecting the status of IT services, its CIs throughout the life cycle of the service. So that this will keep me clear, providing that better picture, so that I will have a clarity in terms of what needs to be addressed at what point in time. So today's monitoring and event management tools, if I speak about, is so capable compared with the way it was there like 15-20 years back. It's so capable. Today we're speaking about bringing automation to it. Already a lot of tools are automated that way, which provides predictive analysis, which would provide the required action to improve the experience of the services. So that is the capability what we are speaking today. So focusing on this monitoring and event management need of a specific service. What needs to be looked at? Something which is non-acceptable behavior. What is that? We can term it as something which is okay. This is how the behavior should be. That needs to be understood correctly. And then whenever the deviation occurs, monitoring and event management would throw an alert. At the same time, it will also keep analyzing the trend of it and providing necessary insight towards what actions needs to be taken. So likewise, each of these practices specific to each of the services has to be looked at carefully and demonstrated. So while doing this, one should not ignore the fact that alignment to those 7 principles defined. It is very essential. So next is technical management practices. So when we say technical management practices, it refers to the management of technology domains for the service management purposes by expanding or shifting their focus from technology solutions to IT services. So if I'm just looking at a server, for example, an application, for example, as an individual component. So I'm not seeing entire service as a whole. But however, my focus being on that individual IT component is also essential. I cannot ignore that part. So the technical management practices are of 3 types, which includes deployment management, software development and management, infrastructure and platform management. So overall, general management practices 14, service management practices 17, and technical management practices 3. So totally 34 management practices defined in ITIL 4. So when I say deployment management, now as you design and transition, obtain and build to deliver, you need to deploy. Now while deploying, that deployment has to be scheduled, like release scheduling we do. So once that is scheduled, then deployment would happen at certain point in time. So deployment practice would help in terms of designing and managing and controlling the build, test and deployment of releases in order to deliver new functionality required by the business. And this is for a specific service or something which needs to be transitioned or implemented as part of the service lifecycle, where you need a specific technical or technological actions, right, that are defined very clearly, and those needs to be complied with. Similarly, if we speak about software development and management, it would focus on enhancing the quality of software development and ensures to provide the required functionality for IT services. So specific practice depending on the kind of platforms which are used. Similarly for infrastructure and platform management. A question may arise. Here we are speaking about the practices which are general, which are service specific, which are technical. But what about the people? Now people is also a resource. As a overall practices what we have, all these are done by people. So one has to look at enhancing the capabilities of the individuals which are required to demonstrate all of these activities. That is definitely one important focus, which specifically it may not mention, but it is very essential to have those individuals. So various roles where it can come across, like service manager, process owner, service owner, which we used to see as a designation, and also roles of service management. Those individuals, those roles needs to have a specific required competencies and capabilities. Only then they can perform here as part of these practices. So next component for service value system is continual improvement. So as we say continual improvement, it's for entire service value system, which ensures that IT services continuously align to stakeholders' expectations. So we just don't speak about fulfilling the expectation of stakeholders, going beyond that expectation. It's very important. So meaning giving better service experience. So the support continual improvement at all levels. ITIL service value system includes continual improvement model, which has continual improvement practice and the improve service value chain activity, right? So when I say the ITIL continual improvement model, this would provide a structured approach to the organization in order to bring the required improvements on regular basis. And the word used is continual, not continuous. So continual in the sense we take that approach of PDCA. We plan, do, check and act, and that continues PDCA. Then improve service value chain activities, that is to establish continual improvement into service value chain, right? So we saw that improve in service value chain as well, if you, the down one in the service value chain picture. Then continual improvement practice, which supports organization in the day-to-day improvement efforts. So this happens aligning to the CSI model, which is redefined compared with the model what was defined in the previous version of ITIL. So that is having 7 steps, like what is the vision being the first question, where are we now, at what stage are we now, where are we now, then where do we want it to be, how do we achieve our goal, how do we get there, Then once you have a plan to get there, take action to get there. Then did we achieve our goal? Did we get there? Then keep the momentum going by having that feedback. So this particular CSA model for continual improvement is aligned and followed. For example, if I say what is the vision of organization to become a best service provider in the region where we are doing the business. If this is the vision, then are we the best service provider at this point in time? You're answering that questions. Where are we now? At what stage are we now? Where are we now? So you're answering no, we are not the best. We are in the third position. So then next immediate action, what will you take? Where do you want it to be? So mostly you take an action in terms of identification of those gaps which needs to be addressed, identification of those opportunities which needs to be taken care of, so that you can move ahead in terms of reaching that position. So next position would be at least reaching near to second one or becoming second one would be the target. Then how do we achieve that? How do we achieve that goal? How do we move forward? You set up a plan for it. You draft a clear plan and then take action. Do it. Then you check. Did we achieve our goal? Did we get there? So if you are there, excellent. If you're not there, work on it again. Based on that feedback, again work based on the vision. If you achieved, set up a next target. If you're not achieved, check out what is that we did not do. Let us continue to do that so that we will achieve that goal. So this CSA model was depicted and followed in ITIL 4 framework. This is the one which is actually mentioned in ITIL 4. Okay, so next we will look at understanding the certification, various different certifications level defined in ITIL 4. So now ITIL 4 Foundation Certification is an entry-level certification which offers basic knowledge of ITIL key elements, core concepts and terminologies used in ITIL 4. The various levels of certifications as defined in ITIL 4 certification scheme is like ITIL Foundation is the basic level of certification. There are three types of modules in ITIL Specialist Certification and two modules in ITIL Strategist modules. So create, deliver, support, drive stakeholder value, high velocity IT are the three ITIL Specialist modules, whereas direct, plan and improve, digital and IT strategy are the two strategies modules. So to accomplish ITIL managing professional, one has to complete these four modules. So each of these modules, create, deliver and support, drive stakeholder value, high velocity IT, direct, plan and improve are a separate examination. Similar to accomplish the certification of ITIL strategic leader, one has to complete direct, plan and improve and digital and IT strategy certifications. So once this is complete, the next level is ITIL master certification. So ITIL 4 foundation examination format would look like this. The duration of the examination is 1 hour. So totally there are 40 multiple choice questions. So each right answers would carry 1 marks and the duration of examination is like 60 minutes. So one has to score 26, that is 65% for 40 questions given, and there is no negative marking for wrong answers. So once you complete the foundation certification, one can move forward towards accomplishing the next level of certification. I will redo this slide from this slide. The companies using ITIL practices. Let us look at few of the examples. So first example for us would be the case of Disney. So why Disney is using ITIL? So it is one of the famous companies that has adopted ITIL. So some of the reasons why Disney is using and what are those issues it had earlier. So Disney was facing the issues to maintain up-to-date and accurate information on their applications. Similarly, the company's management system had difficulty in identifying the right costumes for their cast members and schedule swaps when necessary. It was a challenge to maintain the availability of assets for the customers. So adoption of ITIL in Disney has improved service delivery and performance, 100% availability of assets, improved reliability, maintainability and scalability of IT services, then increase in customer engagement. So similarly, there are many organizations similar to Disney has adopted ITIL and has seen that value realization happening to them. So some more organizations similar to Disney's example what we saw would be Datacom Systems Inc., Muller, Metso, IRS and list goes on. You name the big names in the industry, they have ITIL practiced actively in their organization. Now let us have a look at how you can become ITIL certified. So ITIL Foundation is the first certification. So this certification is an introduction to ITIL 4 and helps candidates to look at IT service management with the help of end-to-end operating model to ease the creation, delivery and continual improvement of tech-enabled products. Further, after foundation, one can become ITIL 4 managing professional, ITIL 4 strategic leader and ITIL masters. To become ITL4 managing professionals, one has to complete 4 intermediate modules defined in ITIL4. Whereas there is also an opportunity for the people who has 17 credits in ITIL V3. They can go for ITIL Managing Professional Transition Program and become ITIL4 Managing Professional. To become Strategic Leader, ITIL4 has 2 certifications to look at. Based on that, a Strategic Leader certification will be provided. So Managing Professional certification provides practical as well as the technical understanding of IT-enabled services, teams and workflows. It is aimed at IT practitioners who work with technology and digital teams. Strategic Leader, this certification helps individuals recognize the value of ITIL for all digital enabled services. It helps demonstrate how clearly one should understand how IT influences and directs business strategy. ITIL Master Certification is for those individuals who need to explain and justify how they personally selected and applied knowledge, principles, methods and techniques from ITIL and support management techniques to ensure business objectives are achieved. So now let us talk about popular ITIL job roles. There are a huge number of ITIL job roles. Let us have a look at some of the most popular ones. So incident manager, problem manager, change manager, business relationship manager, project manager, service level manager. Change manager. So the responsibilities of change manager includes controlling the life cycle of all changes. Change manager should enable beneficial changes to be made with minimal disruption to the IT services. For more important changes, the change manager should consult the change advisory board for authorization. Problem manager. So responsibility of problem manager includes problem manager is responsible for managing the life cycle of all problems. Problem manager should ensure prevention of incidents from taking place and to minimize their impact if they cannot be prevented. For this, problem manager should be well versed with the known errors and workarounds. Incident manager. The responsibilities of incident manager includes the incident manager is responsible for implementation of the incident management process and reporting. Incident manager is the first stage of escalation of incidents in the situations where they are not resolved within the agreeable service levels. Business relationship manager. The responsibilities of business relationship manager is to maintain a positive relationship with customers and to identify customer needs and making sure these needs are satisfied. A business relationship manager works closely with service level managers. Project manager. The responsibilities of project manager includes planning and coordinating resources to deploy a major release within the predicted cost, time and quality. Service level manager. The responsibility of service level manager includes responsible for negotiating and ensuring service level agreements are met. A service level manager should make sure that IT service management processes, operational agreements and underpinning contracts are appropriate for the required service level targets. So a service level manager should monitor and report on service levels on regular basis.
Hope it was informative and interesting. If you have any questions regarding the ITIL topics covered in this particular video, please ask away in the comment section below and our team of experts will be happy to solve all your queries. Thank you for watching, stay safe and keep learning.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.